surprise shone light from distant northern skies. At that point, I realized I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion, then I'm willing to play.
Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, interviews with awakened masters as they share their quantum work with you. The Quantum Guide Show is produced by Karen Holton, creator of the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation, a free 9-step online course to give you the tips and resources you need to thrive. Karen lost and continues to keep off 178 pounds of surplus body weight as she made her dreams come true. Whether you are awakening to the ascension process or simply want a wiser, more efficient lifestyle, this program is for you. No strings attached. The Quantum Guide Show is brought to you in part by Zendome's Orgonite, Karen's unique brand of orgone generators, ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. Find out how orgone generators work and what they can do for you. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out Karen's current selection, only available from her website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Quantum Health Transformation. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 75, my returning guest is Dave Petrella. Dave is an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, Oak Island theorist, and is the co-host of a new show called Aliens and Astrology. This podcast is soon to appear on the Karen Holton TV YouTube channel and other platforms. A little bit about Dave. Dave has traveled to all 50 states and most of Canada doing research, and he has studied world religions extensively, along with Eastern medicine, metaphysics, and topics related to extraterrestrial intelligence. In this episode, Dave shares with us his latest information about the nature and structure of dimensions. I also want to add that Dave is available for teaching, birth charts, relationship matching, spiritual guidance, and many other topics, and he's available on Facebook, Instagram, and by email through his YouTube channel, and the links will be posted in the description below. Hi, Dave. How you doing? Welcome back.
Hey, Karen. Yep, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Great. Now, this is going to be a really interesting show, and I'm going to screen share some images. But before I do that, is there anything you want to say to introduce the topic to our viewers today?
Oh, what we're going to be doing, I'm just going to kind of introduce the concept of dimensions to everyone. It really ties into cosmology.
Cosmology. And how do you define cosmology, Dave? Oops, I think we lost Dave. There you are.
Hey, sorry about that, Karen. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Did you get my question? It was basically, how do you define, just for the viewers so they know what you mean by cosmology?
Yeah, sure. Cosmology essentially is the structure of the solar system. And in the ancient mythologies, and when you're talking about astrology, it's how it's all organized. And it's not just that you have the planets in their order up in the sky and the stars and everything. It's also has direct corollaries to the human body, to spirituality, everything. There's actually a one-to-one connection, which I'll demonstrate as we go through the slides here. But basically, there's an easier, I think probably the easiest way to understand the mental structure of the solar system is through the cosmology that I'm going to be demonstrating today. Like I said, it's going to also show about the planets. I'm going to tie in astrology and biology and kind of everything.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And I really want to illustrate too, Karen, that we can understand it at least largely, and it is organized. It's not just all, happenstance. Just this happens to be over here. This happens to be over. No, it's actually organized along what's called the cosmic axis. And in this first picture here, this is the Vedic Hindu cosmology, obviously from ancient India. And through the middle of this, we have what's called the cosmic axis. It's also called Mount Meru. Sometimes it's called the cosmic tree. It's called Yggdrasil in the Norse traditions. And so actually, it's potentially one of the trees in the Garden of Eden. That's another way to look at this. And basically, in the center of this picture here, you see the flat Earth disk. This is based on the ancient flat Earth model, which essentially all of them were based on the flat Earth model in the ancient history. And so in the center is the Earth. It's also called Midgard in the Norse tradition, which means middle garden. So again, showing you that it's in the middle. Earth is in the middle. I call it purgatory often too. That's another term I use for it because it's kind of a 50-50. You see like about 50% good, 50% not so good things. It's a real mix. Everything, the solar system comes here as its like central meeting place essentially. And that's why you see so much variety, in my opinion.
So would that be referring to the plane of existence that we're familiar with, that we call Earth, that we experience our common reality?
Exactly. Where we are all bodily right now would be the Earth plane, which is the middle dimension or the middle realm, however you want to explain it. But even though you're on this in a physical body, you still have a connection to the other dimensions through the mental structure. And this is what's interesting about this is that, you can be walking around outside and everyone around us can have a different, be channeling a different dimension. And yet physically, we're all walking around in the same space, but we live in different worlds or different mental worlds, or we live in our own world because we are inhabiting different dimensions on the mental plane. The mental plane can be separate from the physical plane that you're on. So the way I like to describe this is that if you look at this diagram here, like I said, the Earth, flat Earth at the center, and then what you have it doesn't illustrate all of them. This is the Hindu model. They all vary slightly, but it's the same idea, same general idea. And basically the way I teach it is 10 dimensions above, which is the 10 heavens above, and then 10 hells below. That's the 10 dimensions below the Earth. And so in total, you have a total of 21 dimensions in locally to this solar system. That's just this solar system. You can also be channeling dimensions outside of the solar system. We can maybe get into that a little bit later. But the ones that are probably easiest to access for us, I believe, are all local within this specific solar system. So that gives you a total of 21 options. Now, if you're on since we're physically in a physical body on the Earth plane, if you're channeling the Earth dimension, then you're going to be picking up on all of the energies around you, and that's where you feel comfortable. You're very comfortable, grounded, living on Earth, just going about your daily routines and everything. There's a lot of people that are not really that comfortable there. Myself, I don't really spend any time with the dimensional energy of the Earth because I don't identify with it. It's a mid-level frequency of the mental world or mental structure. It's not a very high energy plane, and we can see that when we look around us. Look at all the dysfunction everywhere. So I
Dave,
spend most of my time.
I just want to interrupt you and ask. You referred to it as purgatory. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought. Please finish. But can you speak a little bit by what you mean by that? If it means, just what does that mean?
Well, it's like Earth is kind of like a probation planet. That's also how I define it. It's not that for everyone. It's actually, it can be really essentially anything to anyone. I mean, there's not really limitations. Especially when you talk about the quantum field, then you really don't have any limitations. But for a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people are paying or serving their karma here. We've done things. things that we're not necessarily proud of, and that the higher divinities have decided are going to require some payment back in order to keep the balance of the universe. Yeah. So it's a place where you essentially you decide, am I going up or am I going down? And if you're going up, you have the 10 heavens that you can choose from. If you're going down, you have the 10 hells that you can choose from. Sometimes it's not a choice. It really depends on where your heart is sitting, and also your action or your actions equivalent to where your heart is. And then, and have you paid all of your karma? And are you in a confused mental state? There's all kinds of things going on. Sometimes it's self-imposed, meaning that if you really wanted to learn a lesson really fast, you might say, yeah, okay, I'll come to a higher density on Earth, and I'll just push through the lessons, and I'm going to be better off coming out of that, even though it's going to be exceptionally hard. Some people decide to do that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, 10 above, 10 below, you can be physically in a physical body on Earth, and then you're actually living in, say, the 8th heaven, or, the 8th dimension above the Earth is where you're pulling your mental world from. And the mental world you live in is not local to Earth. It's actually coming from a much higher realm. Now, the other thing that can happen is, excuse me, you can be in a body. The higher up you go into the heavens, it's going to be less dense and less physical, but you can be higher up, living in that dimension in a body. So say I was living in the 8th dimension in a much more light, wonderful, beautiful light body. I could still be pulling my mental focus and structure. I could be pulling that from the Earth dimension, which would be 8 levels below where that is sitting, where I'm physically sitting now that I would be up in the 8th, living in the 8th. So you can basically to summarize this, you can be bodily inhabiting any of these 21 dimensions. And from any of these 21 dimensions, you can also be channeling or pulling your mental structure from any of the other 21 dimensions. So there's so many permutations with this model.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I've noticed too, even in my own life, there have been times where I felt like I was in hell, and there have been times where I felt like I was in heaven. And what's interesting is, as I work on my own program, my own journey, my own life, my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, I tend to spend more time in like a heaven-like, and what I would consider a more heaven-like environment, where I'm no longer returning to those horrible places that I struggled to get myself out of. But now, for instance, like manifesting what I need to be healthy and happy is much easier than ever before. And I'm just wondering if that's tied in or relevant to what you're speaking to today.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, depending on what mental structure you're in, it's like sometimes it's a kind of a self-imposed prison that, it took me many years to even realize it for myself. It's like, I'm physically inhabiting the same space, but then yet I have completely different perspectives. And it literally feels like actually, I believe it is. We can go into some quantum theory later if we have time, but it's like literally like you're creating your own dimension based on your mental structure, and then you're projecting that out, and it's creating the physical matter and all of these things. So if you're in a limiting mental space, that's going to limit your access to other dimensions. And then based on which dimension you're living in and which dimension that you're channeling information from, that's also going to limit or help your progress or your detriment because of how much free energy you have moving, your positivity or your negativity. So yeah, it all comes into play. And we really, my message to people is that we can dictate where we want to sit. And a lot of that has, especially as you age, it's harder to do that on command. You actually have to start to work with the body and getting the physiology balanced correctly, because you get to a certain point where you actually have lost access a lot of times to certain things. If you don't fix your diet, if you don't fix the fluid circulation, if you don't fix the coagulation of fluids and all this stuff, that's extraordinarily important. I can't overstate that enough. And also eating foods that are literally coming from a natural garden, or if you are someone that likes to hunt, hunting your own food, anything that's part of a factory or a farming situation that has pesticide, none of that. We can't take that stuff with us into the future. We need to get completely back to nature.
Yeah. I totally agree. I totally agree with you. So although we're not telling the viewers what they must or must not do, I have to say that detoxification from this world was a huge part of my spiritual evolution. I had to change the way I ate, and that took years of practice and falling off the wagon, getting back on. And eventually I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And at that point, it was much easier for me to make a shift. But, I also had to get off of pharmaceuticals, even over-the-counter drugs, non-prescription drugs. I found that the whole allopathic system of medicine didn't work at all for me. And I had to do that before I started to really elevate myself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I got to say, my life isn't perfect, but Dave, my worst days now are better than what my best days used to be. And so what can I say about that?
Yeah, that's fantastic, Karen. I'm just seeing that kind of progress, and, it takes effort. It takes a lot of effort, of course, to get to that point. But my thing too nowadays is that I just want to get the information, at the very least, I want to get the information in front of people so that you can say that you saw it. Because what it was for me is that when I was younger, I never even saw this information. I mean, literally nothing we're talking about today was in front of me, not one topic at all. And I want to get it so that we can get proper astrology in front of people, the scientific-based astrology, which is the kind that I do. It's all mathematics, really. And then I want to talk about the true medicine, which you're going to find the principles of true medicine in the East, not the West. I would say between India and China, those are the two powerhouses for the real medicine of the human body. And just the general topics of spirituality and what's available to you, and how to change your focus, to change your heart, to improve the amount of energy you have moving through your body, the amount of light that you have moving through your body. All of these things, they're really important to do. And you mentioned the pharmaceuticals too, and that topic, it's anything, I'll put it this way, anything that has been mass produced with petrochemicals, in addition to lots of other things that we don't want in our bodies, has no place in the body. It just doesn't. End of story. Now, what it's going to do is it might hijack your system to, usually what it has to do is it has to pull energy or liquids or fluids or hormones or whatever from some other part of your body, and then you have a depleted amount of that in the other part of the body. So then that creates another imbalance. They're not solving the issues. To solve the issues, you need to get the fluids cleansed, and you need to start really. I mean, to be honest with you, people need to start getting into fasting. You need to start getting into some Indian medicine or Chinese medicine, those concepts. And really, what I would encourage people to do, honestly, as long as it's not going to be really dangerous. I mean, you do. If you have a doctor that you're consulting, I'm not saying don't consult your doctor, but for instance, the Native Americans in North America, and then also really all across the world, all the plants they need, Karen, and you know this yourself because I believe you're interested in foraging and you have gardens and things of that nature, is that go out into the forest and find the plant. There's going to be a plant essentially anywhere locally that's going to be able to solve pretty much anything. You just have to know what it is. You have to know how to prepare it. You have to know how much of it to use. But it's all out there for us, You take a walk in the forest, and all of our medicines, they're in the forest.
Absolutely. And we don't have to go to South America for this herb or China for that herb. Pretty well everything that we need grows right in our immediate vicinity, but we have to have the eyes to be able to recognize that. And a really common medicinal plant is the dandelion. which is completely non-toxic. You can eat the roots, you can eat the stems, you can eat the leaves, and you can eat the flowers. I like the flowers because they're sweet. And wow, everybody Google the medicinal effects of dandelions. You'd be surprised, really surprised at what amazing potent nutrition and medicine is just in the common dandelion, and everyone's spraying the hell out of it with toxic substances. Of course, please, if you're going to eat dandelions, go to where they're clean and haven't been sprayed with anything. But it's interesting how our minds have been so mixed up that we're killing the very things that could be saving our life, and we're praising the very things that are taking away our life. But I don't want to get too much into medicine because that's not really part of this, but it is and it isn't. But I was wondering, Dave, can you explain to us a little bit, like, what might it look like on one of those higher planes or the heavens above? And what might it look like in those hellish realms? What are we, what could we expect from if we were able to travel directly to one of those realms?
Well, the highest realm, and actually we can probably advance to the next slide, Karen. I can kind of talk through it. I'm going through the next slide, but basically the higher up you get off the earth, the less dense you're going to be. Higher energy, the more light that you're emitting off your body, the more detail that can be included in the physical form and in the mental structure, and then, in fact, in all the local environment. The more beauty, the higher detail. It's going to be less dense, more light. There's going to be improved lifestyle. I mean, everything around you is going to be improved. So if you went up maybe to the first heaven, the first realm above the earth, maybe there's only one thing that's different. Maybe it's just that there's no war. How much better of a realm would that be? Just if I could walk out my door every morning and say, you know what? Yeah, I know we still have problems with maybe food shortages and stuff, but you know what? No one's killing each other anymore. I actually might be able to tolerate that for a longer period of time, Karen, if I knew that just one of these negative things was taken away from the dimension. That would make me so happy. And then as you're going down, of course, below the earth dimension, you're getting more and more dense. You have less and less mobility. There's potentially not really any light, the way that we conceive of light. I've been in some of the lower dimensions. I experienced shades of gray, white and black and grays. I actually did not see color there. I think that might be how it goes. The infrared, as you guys can see, if you can see this image here, the infrared wavelength is directly below the visible spectrum. That would be maybe, the first and second hell, something like that. And, infrared is, it's got the name in it right there. It's below red. So again, you talk about hell and shades of red and oranges and stuff like this. You're talking about the same concepts. You can see that they're all there and integrated together. So, those are the things you can kind of expect. And of course, the higher up you go, more freedom. The lower down you go, the less freedom. That's how it's been designed. Okay, so now this diagram that we have here is something that I drew to illustrate something, a very well-known concept that I was taught in probably early high school for the first time, which is the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, the electromagnetic spectrum is essentially electricity and magnetism, and they're bound together at perpendicular angles, and they create a vortex, which is known as light. That's how light moves. It moves as electricity and magnetism, and they're intertwined around each other. And when they move together, it forms this spiraling vortex, which is how you get light. And so all I did was that I actually turned this 90 degrees so that it was a vertical diagram instead of how it's usually shown in schools where it's on a horizontal plane. And I put heaven at the top and hell at the bottom. And what I'm trying to illustrate is that the different dimensions, this is also the torus field, by the way, if people are familiar with that. The center would be the earth, of course, and then you have the heavens emanating off from the top that forms a kind of a bubble around the top, and then the hells form the bubble around the bottom. And then earth is in the middle, and actually if you rearrange the letters of earth, you actually get heart, which is something that most people are probably not aware of, but the heart is in the middle. So again, everything is saying that the earth is in the middle. Midgard, you've got earth, heart, you have ether. Earth is also ether, out of which everything emanates. So it's really all there. So in any case, what you'll see is that the earth is essentially equivalent to the visible light spectrum. And so on earth, you have all the 7 colors, and they're not really like supernatural type colors. They're just the standard 7 colors. Violet is pretty beautiful. It's starting to get kind of supernatural towards the end there. But we're confined to being able to see with our eyes a very limited spectrum on earth. And as you go further up, you're getting now into UV light. And this, again, it's equivalent to some of the higher dimensions in the higher heavens. I would argue that the dimensions are made out of UV light instead of traditional visible light. And if you go higher up, you've got some of the highest dimensions are made out of X-rays and gamma rays. And those rays contain a huge amount of information and energy, huge amounts of energy and detail. And it actually, what that does is it actually keeps out the negative energies because it has such concentrated, focused, high energy. And that's how the higher dimensions, I believe, are actually structured, and they're kept intact. And then as you're going beneath the earth, you're into infrared, of course, which is essentially heat, and then microwaves and radio waves. So I would say, some of the negative spirits and entities are probably using infrared, microwave, and radio waves. I don't personally believe they're using UV, X-ray, and gamma because that's not the model I teach. I think it's just I think it's high frequency radio, microwave, and infrared waves. That's what makes let's say a malevolent spirit powerful, is that they're just using, there's a lot of cycles that are happening, but it's still on the radio wave frequency or the microwave frequency or infrared. So this makes a lot of sense to me. It fits with all the other models. It fits with physics and science, and it's pretty simple. It may be a little bit oversimplified, but I think when you're trying to get at the heart of the topic, I think it really solves it really nicely. And I'm not stretching to make it fit. It kind of just falls into place pretty naturally.
Yep. I have a question. 2 things that I have noticed. And, we're told that there's all kinds of rays that are coming to Earth in our current time, gamma rays and X-rays and UVs. I myself love to get exposure to sunshine, to just raw, unfiltered sunshine. And I actually believe that those higher frequency rays actually are information that's affecting me on not just on a cellular level, but even awakening parts of my DNA. And then I want to say something about the infrared. But first, what do you think about that, Dave?
Yeah, I think the key for this one is that the integrity of your cellular structure in your body has to be high in order to integrate that kind of wavelength and that kind of energy. If you're not in really good health and you're weak, and especially if you're eating GMOs and like plastic fats and stuff like that, which are synthetic fats, then it severely compromises your cell structure. And then when the UV light hits that, then it causes bad things.
Yes. So it depends on really the integrity of our physical, what I call our body is the temple.
Right. Yeah, right. And so for people who are, feeling weak or you have chronic diseases and stuff, I might not recommend that. But yeah, for like 10 or 15 minutes for most people to get some just straight UV light, I think that's great. It upgrades. I do agree. It kind of supercharges your body and the cells. It's also very good when it goes into the eyes. Of course, the eyes, with sun gazing in the ancient world, it goes straight to the optic nerve. It goes right to the pineal gland in the center of your brain. And so that's a very positive thing, too, as long as it's low on the horizon for the sun gazing. But just caution and everything, just don't do more than you can handle, and just be careful. Take it easy in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell when I need sun, and I can tell when I've had enough, and it's about being alert to the signals that our body's giving us, because it just has so much wisdom. A lot of people think the body's just a meat wagon that carries the soul, and the soul's the thing that's important, not the body. But I would disagree. I think that without taking really good care of the temple, we're not able to hold that frequency in order to have the spiritual experiences. So I love my body because it's so wise and it's taught me so much. And if I just listen, it lets me know what I need to do to take as good care for it as I can. That then spells out into me having a happier life and, you know, maybe me being in contact with the 10 heavens instead of the 10 hells.
Right, exactly, Karen. And it's also, the body is also your ascension vehicle. We can go more into that, you know, maybe a few shows down the line here, but it allows you to integrate what you want to focus on, and the kinds of energies, the kinds of dimensions, the kinds of things that you want to create and to build. You actually you're actually circuiting that through your body. And then the body is expressing that, obviously, what the mind is expressing and the heart's expressing gets expressed in the physical structure. But we have an opportunity while we're on Earth here to ascend to higher dimensions. And there are ways to dramatically increase the amount of energy, free energy specifically, that you have moving through your body. And that's really when it gets into the true medicine teachings, how to move energy, how to move chi through the body if you're talking about Chinese medicine, or prana if you're talking about ancient India. So there's many, many options, and I agree with you. Really what the idea is that the top levels of ascension, you actually want to be able to yoke, which means to attach your spirit to your physical body, and you want to upgrade it to a very high light body level. And then now everything has been attached and integrated, and now you have a full spiritual form. You have, you know, freedom to travel the universe and all of these wonderful things too. This solar system is kind of like even the solar system is like a probationary solar system. We're not very close to the central sun, Karen. That's the thing too, is that we're supposed to be 2/3 of the way out in the Milky Way. That's not very good if you're talking about, you know, if you're associating, which I do, high level consciousness with being very close to the central sun. We're not in a particularly advanced solar system, which actually, by the way, we can see that if we look around us. And even in the ancient world, they were sometimes, I felt like, pulling at straws to try to figure things out the best way they can. But really, at the end of the day, we need to get back to how to integrate energy in our own body, which, as you said, and I agree, it is the temple.
I just want to make one more comment too about the infrared level. A lot of people have taken just recently to using infrared visual devices and cameras to take pictures of what we could loosely call anomalies in our atmosphere. Some people believe that they're creatures. Some people believe they're UFOs. I don't know exactly what they are, but a lot of them do look like life forms, but we're not able to see them without the infrared. So what I'm wondering is the infrared realms or dimensions, would we then be able to see into them if we had infrared technology so that we could then see that spectrum, which we don't normally see? Would some of those floating creatures, some look like jellyfish, some look like spirals, do you think they're from the first hell below us? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, they might be visiting from the first hell or the first or second hell below. But the other option, like I was saying too, is that this is fascinating, really fascinating. So even within the Earth dimension, as I was mentioning, you have access to the 21 dimensions in terms of mentally. But actually, in some ways, you could really also make a very strong argument for the fact that they also can exist, or spirits can also exist physically on Earth and be in any of the other dimensions, meaning that the only reason we can't see these things is because we're in the mid-level dimension, the Earth dimension. We can see the visible light, but not any of the other lights. So actually, I would fully expect, Karen, that if we could see all of the electromagnetic spectrum while we were on Earth, which would include infrared, of course, includes UV and all the other the wavelengths, that we would see beings of all forms and all kinds. You would see angels and demons and every kind of form of body you could possibly imagine. They would have benevolent and malevolent features. I mean, it's there's no limit. So if you go into an area and you feel kind of strange or a little bit weird, you know, maybe you have some beings who are hanging out there in the infrared or radio wave spectrum. You can't see them, but you feel them because you can feel energy. The body can feel and sense the energy. And then conversely, if you are feeling very good, maybe there's an angel standing next to you who has a body made out of UV light, and they're visiting maybe from their home, or maybe this is their home and they decide to be made of UV light and stay on Earth. There's every option available, and that's just within our solar system. It's not talking about any of the other planetary systems. And I want to mention too, Karen, I took a picture. I've actually taken many pictures with my camera, and I've had UV light show up in the camera, and I've had different spirits. I could see, you know, either a head or a body or something of that nature. And I can see the color is not an earth color. It's like a fluorescent pink and fluorescent purple, very beautiful, very supernatural kind of color, something that you don't naturally see here. And so it goes for really any of the wavelengths, and the cameras are really good at picking up all kinds of things. And it really it shows you that it's there. We just can't see it with our eyes, but the camera can see it. We can feel it, but we can't see it.
Yep.
Okay, well, I guess we can probably go to the third slide, Karen, if you don't mind. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to integrate what I was talking about with the solar system. And I should mention this too, is that, well, you'll see it here too, but basically each of the dimensions have a planet associated with them. And this is really kind of where astrology ties into all of this. Astrology ties into everything, but in terms of how I want to explain it, this is where you're going to see how that fits. So I listed the 10 dimensions. This is just the 10 heavens that I listed on this particular page, but you can also literally flip this upside down, and then you're going to have the inverse 10 dimensions going down, the hell's going down. Each planet has the positive aspects and the negative aspects. The positive aspect of the planet would be the first, for instance, the first heaven. The negative aspect of that planet would be the first hell. And the way that works with the first heaven is the moon is associated with the first heaven. It's called the first lady of the sky. The dark moon, also called Lilith, is going to be on the inverse. So the inverse is the first hell below the earth. And then amazingly, you have this story. The moon essentially is Eve, and Lilith is the dark moon. You have the same story in some of the manuscripts that feature the Garden of Eden, is that there was actually Eve was there and Lilith was there, and that the benevolent humans came from Eve and Adam, and then the not so benevolent humans and other entities came from Lilith and Adam. So in the very first split there, it went from the moon up and then the moon down, or Eve up and then Lilith down. Okay, so as I was saying, this is featuring the 10 heavens. So you've got, of course, the moon all the way up through Saturn. That makes the first 7. They're also equivalent to the 7 chakras in the human body, and the planets are also associated with each one of those chakras. There's a color that's associated with it between red and violet. Most of us know the colors of the rainbow. Each one of those is associated with a chakra and a planet, and one of the spheres above the earth or below the earth. And then you've got also the metals, which is not talked about a lot, but it's very important and it can be very helpful for people. The metals are associated with the chakras. The metals are also associated with the planets. Then you start getting into alchemy, where you have transmuting metals and things. And then you can see the correlation between, for instance, turning lead to gold is talking about the pineal gland to the heart, because this is lead, Saturn's lead, and then the heart is gold, which is the sun. So turning lead to gold. And then you go to the Hindu traditions, and they talk about what's called the Amrit Nadi, which is an direct energy current from your pineal gland to your heart. So they already knew this, Karen, in the ancient world, especially in ancient India. And they didn't have to say, oh, we're going to call it alchemy. They just said what it was. They taught that what it actually is the energy current from the pineal gland to the heart. That's the final step of ascension. And that's, by the way, that's also why Catholics go like this. And I know because I grew up Catholic. It's right here, pineal to the heart. So everyone knows it. This is what it is. Okay, so we got the first 7, and then we've also got that's essentially where the visible, those are the visible visible dimensions. I guess that's the best way to put it, within the visible light spectrum. Yeah, I guess you could say it 2 ways, but yeah, I'll leave that there for now. Okay, and then above that, you've got 8, 9, and 10, the 3 chakras above your head that we can't see. And the 8th is ruled by Uranus, and it's also called, when you're talking about the realm, it's called the fixed stars, and it's related to the mind. The 12 signs of the zodiac, that's where they exist, in that 8th realm, or the 8th dimension, the 8th chakra. They're all the same, they're all equivalent. And then on the 9th, you've got Neptune in the dream world. It's also referred to in the story of Enoch as essentially the glass ceiling, or the crystalline sea, which is what I believe is an energy force field on the 9th sphere before you're able to exit the solar system. The 10th sphere is freedom. There's no conditioning in the 10th sphere. You can be whatever you want. You can go wherever you want. Nice. So, yeah, I just want people to see that the equivalents, they're direct connections, they're direct equivalencies between the 7 chakras. Oh, excuse me, I'll just say 10. The 10 chakras, the 7 colors plus the UV and up colors, and then you've got the metals, they're all equivalent, and then the planets, they're all equivalent. So if you understand the solar system, you can understand your body, because they're copies of each other. And it's actually fairly simple. We just need to push a little bit and get our focus up a little bit and start to work. Really, when you work with the concepts, that's when you start to see how they fit. I'm not just telling people just believe this. No, work with, you've got the picture, work with the model yourself, investigate some mythologies about, say, if you want to learn about Jupiter, 10, look at the 6th chakra, just kind of start to work with some of those ideas. You'll see how it fits. Okay, so that's the basic system. And again, we're talking about the dimensions here and the chakras. The chakras give you access to the dimensions. And then the 8th chakra contains, as I had mentioned before, the entire zodiac is in the 8th chakra, or the 8th realm. That's where all the stars are. So learning what we're working with is, I think, the first step to getting a better understanding and making progress. And we can go to the last slide, Karen, if you don't mind. And I actually wanted to, before I go into this one, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind talking about this concept of 144 that you've come across.
Well, I've come across it in many different ways, but I was told, or at least as far as I can understand of what I perceived when I say I was told, because I have my own perceptual, universe within, right, which I use to make sense of everything. But I was told that we have 144,000 members to our soul team. So our soul team can include our higher self. It can include angels, our guardian angel. It can include deceased loved ones, ancestors. It can include people who were alive once on the earth but aren't alive anymore, that we're not related to. And examples, could be a famous person from the past that we're seeking knowledge and wisdom according to what their speciality was, and they can come to the fore and help us to have that information through spontaneous knowings, might even be through synchronicities. I have found so many times I've had a question, and then I've just been flipping through YouTube, and boom, the answer's right there in a video that I never, how could I have planned it to show up in my feed? That's happened to me so many times. So 144,000, that's a lot of help. And the other thing I want to say about the help, we may not be aware of all 144,000, but certainly that would be great if we have that much help. But the big caveat here is that they won't interfere with our free will. We have to ask for help. We can ask for help from specific people, like our grandmother who's passed on. We can ask for help from the angels. We could just ask for help, put it out there generally. But what we have to ask before spirit beings come into our life and help us. And this has certainly been true in my experience, Dave.
Yes, fantastic. So I actually would agree with that, Karen. Now, the 144,000, I'll start. There's so many reference points for that, but I'll name several of them, and then I'll get into the slide here to talk about the chakra system and that number. But I saw something a couple months back. Actually, it was, I believe it was I think it might have been a demonologist that was talking about this. Very interesting. He talked about how he either said 144 or 140, I think it was 144,000 angels and demons. And then he started to reference the spinal cord. And I asked him, I said, wow, that's very interesting, because that's essentially directly equivalent to what I teach about this. And he was coming at it from a different perspective, but it's the same exact thing. I can guarantee that. And those, I think, would be the helpers, Karen, different forms of the helpers in terms of that. I actually think the way I would probably describe it is I'd probably describe it as 144,000 helpers in the heavens and then 144,000 helpers in the hells. It's always the inverse model.
Yes.
So
as above, so below, right?
Exactly right. Okay, so now the other thing is that the number 144,000 features prominently in the Mayan calendar, the long count Mayan calendar. They were very aware of that number. That's one of their time periods. And then you also have, of course, the Book of Revelation. Now, the Book of Revelation talks about the 144,000 that are saved at the second coming. And when you talk about saved, depending on what story you're talking about and which dimension you're associating with, there's really usually multiple levels of meaning depending on which story you're focused on. So you can have, especially in like the divine teachings and the angelic teachings and everything, you usually have like stacked meaning. There could be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stacked levels of meaning, and you're going to see which one you're focusing on. But they're all available there for you to see and to pull which story. I mean, I try to pull all of them if I can at the same time. It's not always easy to do that. But that number in terms of at the end times is the number of people, supposedly the number of people saved. It's 12,000 from each tribe of Israel is how the story is told. And then really what it is for me, the most important one, again, it's back to your body. It's back to the chakra system. And this picture right here actually shows how it's called the petals of the chakra. Each chakra has a different number of petals between the 7 chakras we're talking about right now. And so you can see it actually, if you've seen the symbols of the chakras before, you can count the number of petals on the outside. Most people are not even aware of this, but usually on like maybe Ayurvedic soaps or like candles people use for yoga, you'll see the symbol of whichever chakra. And go to the outside and count the number of petals. You'll see that there's a specific number. And the reason, essentially chakra is a vortex. It means a spinning wheel is actually what it means. And so the flower is very similar to that diagram. The petals come out from the center and they fan out, the Fibonacci sequence and everything. It's mimicking the portal, the concept of the portal. That's why it's called the flowers and the petal. There's also the flower of life too, which is another really, really fantastic concept. So the way this works is that the bottom chakra has 4 petals. The second chakra has 6. Third chakra has 10. The fourth chakra has 12. The fifth chakra has 16. The sixth chakra either has 48 or 2, depending on which way you're describing it. The reason sometimes it's called 2 is because it's 2 times the lower 5 chakras, which is 48. So that ends up being 96. And then what happens if you add all of those up from the first to the 6th chakra, you end up with 144. There's 144 petals in the bottom 6 chakras. And then the top chakra, the 7th chakra, is 1,000 petals. It's called, in Hindu tradition, it's called the 1,000-petaled lotus flower. So that gets multiplied by the bottom 6. So it's 1,000 times the 144. You end up with 144,000. But really what the petals are referring to are, I'm going to start referring it more to as energy outputs on the chakra. It's not necessarily a nerve ending. I don't necessarily think they're visible to us as, if we were to go into the anatomy, but they are the energy outputs on the chakra, and you're going to have that subdivided within the chakra. And actually, Karen, we had talked about this before. Some of what you teach about the chakra system is it's how they're all kind of fractaled inside of each other, and they're all nested. And within each one, you have other subdivisions, and that's actually essentially what this is getting at here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the basic 7 chakras is just simplified so that we can get our head wrapped around it, and it serves a purpose. But I think if we went down the rabbit hole on each one, we would find increasing complexity. But there's no point in getting overwhelmed with complexity when, for all intents and purposes, what we're working on, we can use the basic symbol system. I actually have a line of orgone generators, and I have some small ones, one for each of the different chakras. So I have like red jasper for the first chakra, the root or base chakra, orange calcite, citrine, often citrine I use, either green tourmaline or malachite, and then aquamarine or turquoise, for the next one. And then higher up could be lapis lazuli. And then at the top, for the top chakra, I usually use amethyst. But what's interesting when you want to translate this to the crystal world, what is interesting is all of them, each chakra is very well supported by clear quartz. And the color spectrum that this corresponds to, the chakra system, when it's not put through a prism that separates it, we get white light. It's very interesting, Dave, how it all corresponds, everything, the crystal world, the food world, I'm talking about the natural food world, the chakra systems, the math or the number system like you're showing here, it all corresponds. And it's so beautiful and so simple.
Yeah, I agree, Karen. That's really great. And I'm just happy that hopefully for people watching to give them a chance, maybe they haven't seen some of the stuff before, but I'm really trying to bring everything together. Every show I do and the services that I provide and everything, to show people that it is an integrated system. There's not really chance. There's a lot of structure here. And there's a lot of things that keep the solar system balanced and integrated properly. And the concept too about white light, you're right. And actually, if the part of the teaching too is that if you turn on all 7 chakras to full power and they're spinning at full power, you actually end up with white light. So now you're making the correlation between what happens when you have the ascension process in full gear in your body, and you start looking at some of these depictions, say, for instance, Jesus or Krishna from the ancient world, and you see them glowing. That's what it is. Glowing white light is when you have all 7 chakras fully turned on, and then you literally will dematerialize. That's really the top ascension teaching. Now, to get that to happen, I mean, it takes serious knowledge and discipline. You really have to, like I said, it's not going to happen at minimum. You have to get into the fasting. It's not easy, but you really have to flush your, it's essentially an oil change for the body. You go to the auto mechanic for the car oil change. You know what happens if you don't have clean oil in your car? You get very bad gas mileage. Your engine can, be destroyed. Well, it's the same thing with your body. And actually, most of us have never had an oil change, Karen, in our whole lives, because that oil is very hard to get flowing properly throughout the bone marrow, specifically in the center of the bones, in the center of the brain, and in the center of the liver. You have to. The only way to access that and draw that out is to get into a pretty serious fast, because your body won't start metabolizing the stored material, most of it, until you don't have any food in your stomach. Then it's going to start to draw from what's stored. And then that's how you get, especially the fat soluble toxins, which are stored in the fatty tissues of the body. That's how you get that to filter out. You have to force it to metabolize it. And that doesn't happen if you're eating, because you put it in your stomach and your body says, oh, okay, I'll use this for energy because this is what's immediately available to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, in our society, many people, I'm talking especially Western society, view food as another form of entertainment. And it certainly can be a huge distraction. And I know for myself, because I used to be highly addicted to sugar and refined carbohydrates and all the chemicals and, trans fats and all of that. I was so addicted to it. Every time I tried to get off, I went through terrible withdrawal symptoms. Now, I'm also an ex-smoker, and anyone who's tried to quit smoking will tell you it's not easy, but you can do it. But you do go through a couple of weeks where you're suffering fairly a lot. But during that suffering is just the most perfect time for soul development and for us to shift our attitudes and our perceptions. And I would say the same goes for fasting. And so when we're fasting, that's something I haven't done for a while. And I think actually I do need to. You've been a good influence on me that way. But in the past, I've fasted. The longest I fasted, although I have to also admit that I was juicing vegetables in a juicer, and I was just drinking the juice every day. But I lasted 43 days. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And wow, did I ever have a whole different physiology than what I have now. So, there's many different ways of fasting. I always sort of recommend that people start off slow and easy and work their way up. I would not try to go for 2 weeks without food and water. I would never do that because I know for me, it's too radical for me. But, a 3-day fast with water, I would probably use water. Some don't. But boy, that can sure clean out the body and give you a fresh perspective. And then again, we really run from suffering. We don't like it. Well, I don't blame anyone for not liking it. But there's different kinds of suffering. There's suffering from overindulgence, and there's also some suffering from underindulgence. But the suffering really helps us to make shifts on a spiritual level, a mental level, an emotional level, a physical level. And it's actually good to go hungry every once in a while on a regular basis. That's my opinion. I'm not giving medical advice here. I'm just speaking from my own experience.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too about this, Karen, is that I like food just as much as anyone else. I might even like food more than most people because of my ascendant, which is Taurus. Taurus, they absolutely love food and pleasures and variety and things of that nature. So, but there's a lesson to be learned here because my body doesn't like it. My brain might like it for the experience, and it might be a pleasurable activity. But there's a lesson to learn about why food actually ends up, specifically too much food and also synthetic foods and all these things. It ends up degenerating the body. Why does it work that? Why does it work that way? Why do I have the most inspiration when I'm not eating? And why does my brain work the best when I'm not eating? And why do I have the most love energy when I'm not eating? It seems like it should be the other way around. So again, that's a chance to learn again about dimensions. What I believe is that in the upper dimensions, you can eat. I guess, I put it this way. I don't think you have to eat in the upper dimensions in order to sustain yourself. But if you feel like it, and you're not bringing suffering on another being and whatever, however you define that, then I don't think it really would hurt your body because you have so much high energy to process everything. Right down here, we don't have a huge amount of high energy to process the food, so they end up degenerating the body. So the lesson is that, and this is what I've said to myself too. It's like, all right, you know what? I'd rather have my freedom and I'd rather have full mental capacity and I'd rather have my body working properly than to enjoy foods that are going to poison me. Now, in the upper dimensions, I think you can enjoy potentially as much as you want to, as long as you're not causing harm to other living beings. But right down here, it's trying to teach us something about self-control and about what is the nature of the dimension. If the things that you like to do the most are the things that are hurting you the most, what does that even mean about where you're living?
Yep.
This can't be a very high level dimension if the things that feel good and seem good are actually hurting you. As it goes back to teaching about that same concept. Karen, do we have 5 minutes still?
Yeah. Do you want me to keep the screen share, or can I close that now?
Oh, yeah, we're good. I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to tell you something too about the higher, the higher dimension to where we're at now, what my guides told me, but I'll wait because I know you want to say something first, I think.
Okay, sure. I just want to go over one more thing here about the states of consciousness, because this is really, when I first started to get into these topics, it was back in 2012, and I found something, I think it was an article. It might even be up online if people type it into Google or something. I don't actually know. I haven't seen it in a long time. But it was called the 7 Shamanic States of Consciousness. This is really what kicked it off for me in terms of the chakra system and consciousness and all this. I had no idea what I was doing, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so the way it was described, and this is actually, it's a really good way to see kind of where you stand yourself in terms of which dimension you're pulling most of your information from, or how your chakras are balanced, is that I'll go through the 7 fairly quickly here. But basically, if most of your energy is in the first chakra, you are essentially in a kind of a vegetative stupor. You're not really able to do anything. You can't even really think. It's kind of like, the way that feels is if you've had way too much alcohol, essentially, and you are barely alive, but you're breathing, but you can't actually do anything. You can't actually function. So I'm happy to say that most humans are not at that state on a daily basis, which is thank goodness. The second chakra, it features, if most of your energy is focused there, it's going to be for survival and for the third. Yeah, I'd say survival and procreation. So that's where all the food urges come in, the sexual urges come in, the defense comes in, the fear factor, all that stuff comes in there. It's where a lot of the animals kind of live on that frequency. And again, you don't really want to be there, but a lot of humans end up spending a lot of time there, a whole lot of time there. And actually our culture, unfortunately, is, I think, directed at that quite a bit in the media and everything. The third chakra, it's getting a little bit better. Third chakra is about emotions and relating to other people. And the only thing about that is that if you're primarily living through your emotions, you're going to be very limited too. You don't want something to happen and you get emotional and you're influenced by that immediately, and then you start to react and stuff. That's not really ideal for higher consciousness. You don't really want to be in your emotions either. But it is a lot better than being in the first or second chakra for all of your energy. Now, the fourth chakra is when it really starts to get pretty good. The fourth chakra is, of course, the heart. And that's, it's kind of low-level intuition. Essentially, it's making decisions based on a moral basis. A good example of that is if I go out and, someone does something maybe I don't like, instead of deciding what I'm going to do based on that from an emotional standpoint, which is, it's a natural thing for humans to react like that. But really, when I'm deciding what the proper thing to do is, it's like, no, I'm actually deciding that from the heart. I'm deciding what I need to do based on that. And I'm not deciding based on if I feel happy or sad or if I'm annoyed or whatever. Right. I'm not using that.
You do things because it's the right thing to do, right?
Exactly. So I tend to live I mostly tend to live in the fourth chakra in terms of my consciousness. I'd say between 4 and 5. And but in any case, if you're in the fourth, you're doing pretty good. I mean, most humans are probably not at that level, but it's a much higher level consciousness than any of the lower 3 that I just described. The lower 3 it's kind of like the animal world. It's also referred to as I think Upper Egypt, which is in the Nile tradition from Egypt. Upper Egypt is not. Lower Egypt is, I believe, is actually the Nile. The Upper Egypt is further down towards like Aswan and down that way. But anyway, you want it to be not from the lower energies, which is the bottom 3. You want it to be from the top energies, which is the top 3. And of course, again, the heart is in the middle, balancing everything. So the minimum, you really want to aim for that fourth chakra consciousness. Now, the fifth chakra is called the bridge. You can see that in your body too, because it's the neck.
Yeah.
And the neck is the bridge. It's that narrow passage between the lower, well, I believe the fourth is still pretty high, but the lower consciousness down here and the upper consciousness is up here. So this is the bridge. And if you get most of your energy in the fifth chakra, you will actually, your self-consciousness disappears completely. It's a wonderfully refreshing feeling. I think as we age, most of us haven't felt that in a long time. When we're kids, we have that. We have a lot of that. But essentially, everything becomes integrated. You don't really feel like things are separate from you. You feel part of the big picture and the big plan and everything. It's a really nice feeling, a really liberating feeling. It's fantastic to have that experience, to be in the fifth chakra. The sixth chakra is kind of like where the psychic abilities come in. It's a high-level intuition. So if you're able to pull from other dimensions and you're able to pull from other timelines and you're getting really good downloads and things of that nature, it's probably coming in from the sixth. A lot of that's going from the sixth chakra. High-level intelligence is coming in from that. And the seventh chakra is essentially bliss. And bliss doesn't really include any kind of philosophizing or rationalization. There's no explanations needed. You don't have to figure anything out. You literally are in ecstasy. That's the seventh chakra. Mm-hmm. So the seventh chakra, the thing is though, you don't want to be fully there necessarily if you don't have your if you haven't gotten your heart straight yet, because if you're in bliss but you have all these animalistic tendencies and things of that nature still, because it's not just one of the chakras is turned on. It's usually they're turned on in ratios depending on where you're focusing your energy. So you might have if you're really, really doing a great job, you might have 75% in the seventh chakra, and then the other ones are maybe turned on 5% here, 7% in the third chakra, some things of this nature. But really, essentially, you really want them ideally all turned on 100% and calibrated and balanced correctly, and that's when you get the white light. So that's showing you what's available to you, and depending on those descriptions, it kind of shows you where you're spending most of your levels of consciousness and most of your mental focus and time. And of course, if you go above that, the eighth chakra, the eighth sphere, the eighth dimension is the mental world, which is invisible, and it's where you can create things. You create ideas and thoughts and music and all this stuff that happens in this invisible place, which is in the eighth sphere above your head up here. So that's, again, a much, much higher level than even the seventh chakra. And then the ninth chakra is the dream world. In the dream world, you can start to work with fractals and geometric shapes and wonderful colors, and you can start to form and mold things and things of that nature. It's a very free place, a very free dimension. You can be whoever you want to be. You can change who you are every 5 minutes. You can change your form. You can move through time. There's a huge amount of freedom, but you're still within the solar system. You're not out of that yet. You're not free of this solar system model. And then, of course, the 10th dimension, or the 10th chakra, is going to be the freedom point. And that's when you break through that crystalline glass ceiling or the force field separating the 9th and 10th dimension. And then when you get to the 10th dimension, if you're fully exhibiting those energies, then you can actually create matter. You can create universes. You can create your own solar system. You can create anything you want, and you have all of the abilities from the lower chakras. Everything's balanced. So ultimately, what I would describe the solar system as is it's an ascension machine or a descension machine, and you can go up, you can go down, but either way, if you haven't gotten to that 10th level, the top of the 10th level and the 10th heaven, then you're still contained within the solar system. And you don't, the way I believe it is that you don't get to leave the solar system until you have passed all of the gatekeepers, which are the 10 planets, and they're the 10 dimensions, and they dictate, okay, are you at this point, are you qualified to live in the 5th heaven? If you're not, then you'll be demoted to one of the lower heavens, or maybe even back to the earth. The whole point is to be able to leave the solar system. You can't do that until the universe trusts you, is what I believe. So you have to pass the moral tests and the test of your character and your heart and your mind. Then when you can be trusted, then you're free to go explore. And there's nothing more exciting than that. I mean, to be able to think about all of the other universes out there and the other solar systems and galaxies. It's all available to us, Karen. And I think, when you start to talk about the topic of aliens and extraterrestrial beings, a lot of them are, their home planet, I believe, is the Earth. A lot of them are from some of the lower, the hells. Some of them are from the heavens. Some of them, I think, are from the extra lands. I do tend to believe in that with the flat Earth model. I think more lands past the Antarctica. So, but all of that stuff is still within our solar system. Then the thing that's really fascinating to me specifically is I want to know what's outside of our solar system. And if we're getting visitors from outside of our solar system, I'm assuming they're either using 0 point energy to instantaneously materialize, through a quantum field, or they could also use wormhole technology, which can be somehow somewhat similar. But the highest civilizations, I would fully expect them to be using quantum laws, which it's instantaneous materialization. It's exact, it's direct, it's specific, and it's exactly what you want, what you intend. I think a lot of the extraterrestrials in our solar system are actually using technology because they haven't figured out how to work with free energy yet, and they're relying on anything they can. They're trying to use physical laws, but with 0 point energy, you rely on yourself and you make the decision for yourself. You don't have to deal with any of that.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We're out of time now, Dave, but I want to tell the viewers that Dave and I are next month in July of 2022. We're launching a show that we're co-hosting together called Aliens and Astrology. And one of the topics that I'm hoping we're going to cover before the end of this year is we're going to do another episode on dimensions, but this time we're going to go much deeper, much broader. We're going to bring in a whole bunch of other information. I think it'll be absolutely fascinating. But you've done a great job today, Dave, just explaining what we did go through. It's a fairly deep topic, but it's an interesting topic, and it's not something that you hear about every day. So I think it's great that you're able to do such a good presentation. The other thing I want to say before we go too is Dave's actually done my astrology birth chart for me. And he goes and covers information I have never seen covered anywhere before. And he makes it easy to understand and gives you the science behind it. So if you're looking for someone to do, your natal charts, or you want to do some relationship matching, or you just want to reach out and get some totally new ideas on how you can improve your spirituality, I highly recommend that you contact Dave because he's really, really good at what he does. Now, before we go, Dave, we'll have the links in the description below. I really encourage people to also go and subscribe to your YouTube channel. Dave's got a new YouTube channel, so let's help him get going with that YouTube channel by subscribing and helping him to get his numbers up. That will help a lot. But before we go, Dave, do you have any closing comments or recommendations you'd like to make?
Thanks for that, Karen. Any astrology I can help people with, of course, birth charts, relationship matching, business applications. If you want to help pick days in the future to have more higher chances of success, I can do that too. I can find the times of the year when you're going to have, again, more like kind of a boost, or maybe have a little bit more of a struggle. And then, of course, also health tips, principles of Eastern medicine. I can help with that. General spiritual guidance. And as Karen already mentioned, I'm on Facebook under Dave Petrella, Instagram, Dave Petrella 12, and I have a new YouTube channel. It's also under Dave Petrella. And if you want to send me an email, my email link is on my YouTube page. Just click on that and it'll give you the email. And apart from that, I'm really excited for our new show, Karen. I can't wait to cover some of these topics in more detail, and we're going to have some great guests coming up too.
Yeah, really excited. And we're also part of the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, Dave and I. So you can always find us there as well. But we'll keep you posted, and we'll make sure you have the links. And I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much, everybody, and Dave for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to Karen's YouTube channel, click the like button, and share this show with your friends. Check out Karen's website at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. All the links are available in the description box below. Until the next time, keep up the good work.
Endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul to do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all in